The studio of The View buzzed with its usual daytime electricity. Cameras glided above the audience. Producers whispered into headsets, and the iconic panel sat ready for another lively discussion. But today, a quiet tension rippled beneath the surface. Michael Douglas, invited to talk about his new film and his decades-long career, sat politely at the edge of the table, unaware that the segment would soon veer sharply off course. Joy Behar, known for her sharp humor wrapped in a smile, leaned forward with a sparkle of mischief in her eyes. The conversation had begun harmlessly. Memories from Hollywood, stories about working with legendary actors, and a heartfelt mention of his father, Kirk Douglas. Michael answered each question with warmth, his calm presence winning over the audience. But then Joy shifted. "So, Michael," she said, tapping her cards, "some people think your recent interviews make you sound a bit out of touch. A little old school, maybe even out of step with today's Hollywood. What do you think?" The audience reacted with a soft gasp. Michael froze mid-smile. He wasn't offended by criticism. He'd faced headlines for 40 years, but the insinuation, delivered so casually, struck deeper than expected. "Well, Joy," he responded slowly, "I'm not sure I follow." "Out of touch how?" Joy shrugged lightly, as if the remark were nothing more than a passing joke. "You know," she said, "talking about loyalty, commitment, sticking to tradition, those things aren't exactly trending anymore." Michael blinked. The room shifted. The audience sensed the shift, too. The co-hosts exchanged glances. Something had sparked, something personal. The air thickened as Michael leaned forward, his jaw tightening just enough to reveal the first flicker of fire. And that was the moment the segment began, slipping from controlled conversation into dangerous territory. Michael inhaled deeply, trying to keep the conversation grounded. He prided himself on being measured, thoughtful, composed. But Joy's comment echoed inside him, not because it mocked his values, but because it dismissed them as irrelevant. Tradition wasn't a trend to him. It was the backbone of his life and career. He straightened in his chair. "Joy," he said, voice steady but unmistakably firmer, "loyalty and commitment are not outdated ideas. They're human values. They're the reason I'm still working, still married, still proud of the career I've built." Joy lifted her eyebrows, unfazed. "Relax, Michael. It was just an observation." The word relax hit him like a spark against dry leaves. "I am relaxed," Michael said, though the heat in his tone suggested otherwise. "But I don't appreciate dismissing decades of work as something out of step. You invited me here to talk about my film, not to make me a punchline." His voice rose, not yelling, but charged, fast, unmistakably sharp. The studio audience went silent. Whoopi reached out instinctively, placing a calming hand on the table. Sonny leaned slightly forward, prepared to diffuse the tension if needed. "Michael," Whoopi said gently, "I don't think Joy meant—" But Michael cut in, lifting a hand. "I know what she said, and I know what she meant." His eyes locked on Joy, unwavering. "You can challenge my opinions. You can ask about my career. But don't twist my values into some kind of generational joke." Joy finally stopped smiling. The shift was subtle but unmistakable. A flicker of surprise. Maybe annoyance, maybe guilt. For the first time, she realized she'd poked too hard at someone who rarely let emotions slip on camera. The temperature in the studio rose another degree. Producers leaned forward behind the glass. Every camera stayed locked on Michael's face. Something was building. Something ready to break. The breaking point arrived when Joy exhaled, shook her head, and said with a half-laugh, "You're taking this way too seriously, Michael. You sound like one of those grumpy Hollywood legends who can't accept change." The audience reacted instantly. Some gasped. Some groaned. Some laughed nervously. Michael's expression hardened with a clarity that was almost startling. "Enough," he said, louder than any voice heard on the show that week. The table fell silent. "You invited me here in good faith," he continued, "and I showed up in good faith. But what you just said, what you keep saying, is not discussion. It's disrespect. I've spent my entire life adapting to change, working with new filmmakers, supporting new voices, learning from the next generation. I'm not afraid of change. I'm afraid of the way we tear each other down for entertainment." His words struck the studio like a sudden crack of thunder. Even Joy froze. "I've survived Hollywood politics, industry crashes, Tabloid wars and health battles, Michael said, leaning forward, eyes blazing with conviction. But I will not sit here and be reduced to a stereotype for a laugh. A beat of total stunned silence passed. Then the audience erupted, some in applause, some in murmurs, some unsure what they'd just witnessed. Joy swallowed, shifting back in her chair. For once, she didn't have a comeback. Whoopi stepped in gracefully. "Let's all take a breath," she said. "Michael, thank you for speaking your truth. Let's reset this as a conversation, not a combat sport." Michael exhaled, the fire slowly dimming. He nodded, calming. But the moment had already etched itself into the show's history. Later, headlines would roar, "Michael Douglas explodes on The View after Joy Behar said this." And for once, the headline wasn't exaggerating.